All right, let's get right into it. You know, sometimes the biggest shifts in politics don't happen in the nation's capital. Nope, they happen in a local council meeting, maybe on a totally normal Tuesday night. And that's exactly the story in Shoalhaven, where one single meeting and just two key votes completely redrew the local power map.
This quote really says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the moment. You had this political group that seemed absolutely solid, completely untouchable, and then suddenly the cracks started to show. A bloc that had pretty much run the show since the 2021 election was about to face a serious test. And that really brings us to the big question we're tackling here. How did this happen? It wasn't about just one thing. It was about transparency, it was about long-awaited community projects, and it was about the way local government should work. So how on earth did a powerful majority lose its grip in just a matter of hours?
To really get the impact of that night, we first have to understand who the players were. Before these votes, the political scene in Shoalhaven Council was, well, it was very clearly drawn. One group held all the cards.
This slide lays out the before and after perfectly. So on the left, you've got the SIG 6. That's the Shoalhaven Independent Group, led by the mayor. They had the numbers, they controlled the agenda, that was the old reality. But on the right, you see what started to emerge, this new, much more fluid alliance. It's not a formal party or anything, just a working group of councillors, from Labor, some independents, and moderates who realized they could vote together on issues they agreed on.
So, that first crack in the wall? It appeared during a pretty tense debate about transparency, and it all centered on the controversial appointment of the council's new CEO.
The question itself was pretty simple, really. Should all the councilors get to see the legal advice the mayor was using to basically stop them from even discussing the whole CEO recruitment process? I mean, a local government watchdog was already asking questions, and you had some councilors feeling like they were being completely kept in the dark.
Okay, now let's look at how they voted. The really crucial thing to see here is that first name on the left, Councillor Proudfoot, a longtime core member of the mayor's SIG bloc, broke ranks. He actually seconded the motion to make the advice public and then voted for it, siding with this coalition of Labor, Independents, and other moderates.
And the result is right there, clear as day. The motion passed, and it wasn't even close, 9-4. For the first time on a major governance issue, the mayor's bloc had lost. One person switching sides was all it took to completely change the game.
But the night was not over, not by a long shot. The second major test came just a few hours later, and this one was about a community project that had been stuck in political limbo for, well, the better part of a decade, the Sanctuary Point Library.
Now, this wasn't just some random item on the agenda. The community was all in on this one. We're talking over 1,200 people signing a petition, basically demanding the council stop stalling and just build the library where they wanted it. The pressure was definitely on. At its heart, it all came down to this. The community wanted the library at the Carey Street site. Council's own reports pointed to the Carey Street site as the best spot. But the SIG bloc had killed that plan before, pushing for a different location. And now, the whole issue was right back on the table.
And when it was time to vote, things got even more unpredictable. This time, Councillor Proudfoot actually voted with the mayor's bloc. But then look at Councillor Cox, another SIG-aligned member. He crossed the floor and voted for the community's preferred site. That's the second defection from the mayor's camp in one night.
And the result was razor thin. Just look at that 7-6. This really shows you how absolutely critical that single vote from Councillor Cox was. It flipped the whole thing. After years and years of delays, the library project was finally going to the site the community had been fighting for.
So, these two votes, they weren't just about a legal document or a library building. They really put a huge spotlight on some of the basic, fundamental principles of good government, things like transparency, accountability, and how public officials need to handle potential conflicts.
So let's just clear up a really important term here. The mayor had been citing a preliminary inquiry from the Office of Local Government as a reason to shut down debate. But what is that really? Well, the OLG's own guidelines say it's just an information gathering step. It is not a formal investigation, and it definitely does not mean councilors can't discuss issues of governance or process. Using it to silence debate was a pretty big overreach.
That library vote also brought up this whole issue of conflicts of interest. See, the modern standard isn't just about whether a councilor thinks they're biased. It's all about perception. It's called the reasonable observer test. In this case, Councillor Proudfoot, who's the president of a country club that uses parking next to the library site, argued against it partly because of parking.
And that's a perfect example of where this test comes into play.
And if you want it straight from the horse's mouth, this quote from the NSW Independent Commission Against Corruption, ICAC, just drives the point home. It doesn't matter if you believe you're being impartial. What matters is what a regular, fair-minded person looking in from the outside would think. When it comes to public integrity, perception is everything.
So what can counselors actually do when they're in a situation like this? Well, this slide basically gives them a playbook. They have every right to demand the facts, to go straight to the oversight body for clarification, to see the legal advice, and to keep debating policy and process. It's really about them using their rights to make sure there's accountability.
So, what's the big takeaway from this one incredibly dramatic night? It wasn't just about winning or losing a couple of votes. It was a fundamental shift in the whole political dynamic of the Shoalhaven Council.
And this is the new reality. That SIG's block, they just can't guarantee a win anymore. Instead, you're seeing this shifting, issue-by-issue majority that forms based on the merits of an argument, not strict party lines. The sources we've seen even say the whole tone of the meetings has gotten better, more respectful, more focused on actually getting things done. The mayor's still the mayor, but our absolute control of the room is gone, and community outcomes seem to be winning out over factional loyalty. And we'll end on this final thought. You had two counselors who chose to vote for what they saw as principle and community over just sticking with their faction. And in doing that on two key votes, they didn't just change the outcome of a meeting. They cracked open the whole political process, creating a council that feels more fluid, more accountable, and, a little more alive.